Hey everyone, welcome to this month's Dapr community call. My name is Cecil Phillip and I'm joined by my fellow community manager, Dana. Thank you all for joining us. We have a very action-packed schedule today. I think this is some of the most folks that we've ever had at a community call. So I'm very excited for all of you to join us for what we're going to present. First, we're going to kick off with Walter. Walter is one of our new Dapr meteors. We'll talk about what Dapr meteors are in a second, but definitely glad that Walter can join us today. Then we're going to have a presentation from Laurent and Salaboy about Microcks and Dapr. And then we'll have Mark and Yaron talking to us about the Dapr Workflow Composer. So why don't we just go ahead and get into it? I know we don't have tons of time. Walter, I'm going to bring you on. And why don't we just quickly get into a quick round of introductions? Why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Sure. Hi, Cecile, Dana, Laurent, Yaron, Mauricio, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm very honored and grateful to be part of the Dapr Meteors program. My name is Walter. I'm based here in Joinville, it's a small city in the south of Brazil. My master's degree is in computer science in the area of distributed systems. I work a lot with cloud because I am an instructor, an AWS authorized instructor, Microsoft certified trainer, and NVIDIA Deep Learning Institute instructor too. Also, I am in the Microsoft MVP program since 2020 in the Internet of Things category, and in this program that I know I know the Dapr project, and I'm very happy to be here and be recognized with this award.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate all the contributions you've made to the Dapr project. If you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit about how what brought you to Dapr? Like, how did you discover the project and what got you excited to be working with it?
Sure. I know I know the Dapr project because the Microsoft MVP program, uh, because the Mark Husanovic lectures and presentations about Dapr. So I became to use as a teacher. I am a professor at a university here in Joinville, my city, called Univille, and we start to use Dapr as a runtime and a base foundation to teach how to build distributed systems. Then I became a fan of Dapr.
Nice. I love the thought that you're using Dapr to teach distributed systems concepts. I think it's a great project for that because it removes so much of that boilerplate. Definitely curious to hear how how has that experience been with your students and them learning about Dapr and using it to, build out some of these, other things in the coursework?
They really love it because Dapr makes very easy to build a distributed systems. You don't have to worry about the other services that we need to consume. So this make the experience of developing a complex system so easy. They love it.
Nice. That's great to hear. Well, Walter, we're really glad that you're joining us in our Meteor program. And for folks that don't know, our Meteor program is very similar to like the MVP program. There's folks in the community that have been working with Dapr, teaching, giving presentations, creating content around it. And so we definitely want to recognize them in all of the support that they've been giving the Dapr community. So Walter is one of our new Meteors. So everyone give Walter a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much for being here. And if folks want to reach out to you, I'm sure you're inside of the Dapr Discord channel, which folks can always dive into, and I'm sure you're looking at issues and things of that nature. So if people want to reach out to you, they could find you in some of those places.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, Walter. Well, appreciate you. We're going to take you off, and let's go ahead and dive into our next presentation. Right. So I'm going to bring on Laurent and Mauricio. Here we go. Folks, how are you doing?
All good, all good.
All good.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Hi, Cecile. Hi, Donna. Hi, all. And thanks a lot for having me. It's cool.
Sure. Thank you both so much for coming on. So you're going to be talking to us about Microcks and Dapr. Now, I know you have a whole presentation set up and all this type of stuff, but can we just start at the beginning? Like what is Microcks and like what benefit does it bring to like the Dapr community?
Yes, exactly. So I'll take this one. So Microcks is a CNCF project, and it allows you to mock or simulate your APIs or services, every kind of APIs, every kind of services. So it is perfectly suited when you are dealing with complex applications, when building such an environment is complex and you can rely on smart simulation instead of deploying a whole infrastructure. So basically, Microcks is an accelerator to allow different teams to work in parallel on different things, working on isolation and speeding up the delivery of their application.
Yeah. And we have been working with Laurent because I was looking into that space on how do we simplify not only the testing, but the developer inner loop when building Dapr applications outside of Kubernetes clusters, right? So I've been working on the Java side of things in the Java SDK and some integrations with some communities there. And by chance, I think that because it's a CNCF project, but also because it's a very interesting space, we decided to take things into our own hands into integrating these two projects together. So that's kind of what the presentation is about.
Nice. Well, why don't I go ahead and bring up your screen and I'll let you two get to it.
Cool. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
1 second. There we go. All right, your screen is up. Go ahead and go for it.
Is it up? Okay, so yeah, basically I'm here with Laurent Bordeaux from Postman, I think, and I'm Salaboy from Diagrid, and we want to talk a little bit about Microcks and Dapr, and for that we have this demo application which is called the Pizza App Demo, which is, again, it's a Spring Boot Dapr enabled application that I have running here in my cluster. So if I refresh here, you can see that basically it allows me to place a pizza order, and we have a kitchen service and a delivery service. So the first thing that happens is that I place the order with the UI, with the front end, and then the kitchen picks up the order is being prepared, and then the delivery service, when the order is ready, it's going to delivery to my house, right, until the order arrives into my place. So this is basically for us to have a playground to show how different system service-to-service interaction works, also pops up because all the eventing that is happening across the services. The application architecture is very simple. There are only 3 services. Just to implement this flow, we are using service-to-service invocation to call the kitchen and delivery service, and both the kitchen and delivery service are reporting back to the store, who is reporting back to the user using PubSub in this case, right? So from a Dapr perspective, this is how the application looks like. We are using PostgreSQL to store the order when it comes into the store. And then we are using Kafka as the PubSub implementation to send messages from the delivery and kitchen service back into the store, reporting about the progress in the order. The thing that I was working on is something on the Spring Boot side, which is a framework inside the Java community to automate how do we build these services, right? Again, it's a very simple architecture, 3 services. But I wanted to make sure that, for example, if there is a team in charge of improving the store service on its own, they have everything they need to work against the Dapr APIs for their local development, right? This is not in a cluster. We wanted to enable developers to work outside clusters. The Spring Boot community is very specific on not using other tools like the Dapr CLI, for example, or the multi-app approach that is very widely used in the Dapr community. So we used a library that allows us to wire up a bunch of containers together whenever we start the service for local development purposes, right? So we use test containers to wire these things up and to bootstrap that service outside a Kubernetes cluster. I can quickly show that because I know that we do not have much time. But what I'm doing here is that the same thing that was running in a cluster before, right? We have the services running in a cluster, and I was accessing that cluster to do the demo. We have Postgre and Kafka there. What I'm going to do here inside the pizza store service, this is the pizza store service. I'm just going to start, the service on its own, right? And I don't want to start Dapr or anything. I want all that to happen for me, right? I'm not starting Dapr, I'm not starting Kafka, or I'm not starting PostgreSQL. Everything is wired up. And the same application that I'm starting is starting all the services for me. So I can quickly refresh this, and you can see that I have the store. I can place an order. nothing will happen because I do not have the the kitchen or delivery services up and running. So I will see this exception. But if I want to change the service, like the UI or the backend, how do I take the order and store it and do different things? I can do that because everything is set up for me. But that's for a single service, right? Like I'm not talking about the 3 services or just building and creating kind of containers for the services. That's something that gets complicated quite fast. So if we are, for example, if we want to test or if we want to start building integration tests that basically shows us service-to-service interactions with other Dapr-enabled applications, we will need to do all this wiring by hand or using some tool like test containers. But again, we wanted to simplify this development loop and all this wiring that is happening in there. And I think that that's where, I think that something like Microcks can help a lot, because you take it from there, Laurent.
Exactly. So that's where things get complicated when you discover or you're being imposed a new service dependency. So like in the Pizza Hut application, 2 or maybe 3 services are manageable, but think about 4, 5, or even more. And in this case, testing an application with service dependencies can become a nightmare, and it raises many challenges. So the first challenge, thanks Mauricio for, no, you can stay on this one. Yes, the first challenge is the one of the cognitive load, because this challenge has skyrocketed these last years with the advent of polyglottism, especially in microservices architecture. So you have to know the tool you're using every day. For example, Maven to build and run a Java application, but you also need to manage different stacks. Sometimes you work with Makefiles or you launch runtimes manually. Then containers came to the rescue, but it also brings a lot of complexity, and you still have these legacy things you're managing the good old way, let's say. So all of this puts a big burden on developer shoulders and a very high cognitive load. And the second challenge we also face with this kind of setups, next slide, please.
Yeah.
We just talked about containers, and there's these great ideas, but we tend to put them everywhere. So you're developing your application, and then you need containers for your services dependencies. And these containers also have dependencies, and things get very complex. So maybe at the end of the day, you put everything into a local Kubernetes cluster or Minikube, and it can get out of control because you still have this cognitive load of knowing containers and Kubernetes, but you also have these issues of managing images updates, managing updates of test datasets, and so on. So moreover, you need power. Yes, you need a maybe bigger machine every year, and you're finally wasting a lot of time and a lot of money. So, but don't get me wrong, I'm not saying to not use containers, absolutely not. Just say it's tricky to use them that way. So, and finally, as a challenge also, next slide, please. As a developer, you will face great temptations to take shortcuts, to lower the pain. You can decide to avoid doing integration tests, even if your app has a clean hexagonal architecture. It's still very risky these days. Or you can use mock frameworks like EasyMock, Mockito, this kind of stuff to mock your dependencies. And that's fine, but there are still a lot of issues that you will not detect by staying in your VM, in your runtime. For example, what about the network connections, the JSON serialization issues, the configuration of connections? It's very difficult to check all of these with mock frameworks only. And the third bullet here is that finally, even if you're doing integration test, there is one big pitfall of relying on your own vision or understanding of your external dependencies. Sometimes you read an API description or documentation and decide to produce your small faker because after all, it's easy. It's just some lines of code. But then you take bad assumptions on how it is expected to work, and it becomes a big pain to maintain on the long time. So it's dangerous to rely on your own interpretation of stuff and not on a source of truth. So next slide, please. To sum up things, we saw 3 big challenges of testing distributed apps: the level of complexity that bring a high cognitive load, the complexity that lead to costly setups where you burn a lot of CPUs, a lot of resources, and finally a lot of time. And also all the possible shortcuts that are all very, very risky. So there still is a lot of pain for developers facing this kind of complex application, and we need to bring back the joy and the velocity, allowing them to just focus on delivering new features and not dealing with all the plumbing of the infrastructure. And so there must be a better way, because luckily we are in a distributed world and it is based on services, and they all have interfaces like in API. These interfaces represent promises of features to be delivered, and they can be codified in contracts. Contracts have a bad reputation. Sometimes they're usually associated with constraints, with governance, and sometimes you also just see them as documentation. So it's partly true until you have a very pragmatic way of making them useful, and that's what we are trying to do with Microcks. So basically, in a nutshell, next slide, please. Microcks is a CNCF project that takes all your contracts artifacts that may already exist, so all your OpenAPI files, gRPC, protobuffer definitions, Avro schema file, maybe also your existing record of live traffic, and it is able to ingest everything and to provide on-the-fly, lightweight and smart simulation of these different API or style of services. So it deals with REST APIs, with gRPC services, but also with async APIs, this kind of stuff of event messages, event-driven architecture you have on top of Kafka, for example. So the more you put in Microcks, the smarter the mocks and the simulation that really represents real-life traffic and real-life simulation of your dependencies. And next slide, please. The second part of Microcks is that by ingesting all those artifacts, it is also able to produce on the fly a comprehensive contract testing suite for your different endpoints. So you no longer have to code to write tests checking that for example, the HTTP response code is correct, or the JSON payload you receive from the message is correct, or you received a message from Kafka, this kind of stuff. Microcks is able to do it for you automatically, just inferring stuff from all the artifacts it has ingested at the beginning. And so you can plug this into your CI, but also into your code directly as a developer. So next slide, please. And you can see that the nice thing and why it fits so very well with the Java SDK for Dapr is that Microcks has an integration with test container. So here you can see Java code on how to just start Microcks at the beginning of your test with your application. And we have modules for different languages. So if you're also facing this kind of problems on TypeScript application, on Go application, on .NET application, you still have the same set of features with Microcks. So here you can see you just ask your test to start a Microcks container with different features enabled, and you just load into Microcks your different artifacts so that on the fly, it will provide you simulation endpoints that mimics all your external dependencies, all your, for example, in the case of the pizza application, the delivery service or the kitchen service that we're dealing with the Dapr containers. And so finally, if you can go, yes, to this slide, what we achieved is to have this complete representation of the complex application, but where all the dependencies here, the kitchen services and the delivery services, are just lightweight simulation that are provided on the fly by Microcks. So you don't need to build those components, to run them on your machine. These are just simulations provided by Microcks.
And this was extremely interesting for me because, again, I wanted to enable developers to write tests here from the store service to validate that whenever they are calling other services using the service-to-service invocation from the Dapr API, they can get some results, right? I could have faked this side of the applications, but now relying on contracts, I have the extra visibility and extra confidence that, as soon as the other service is again, like, still valid with this contract, my store service application should keep working, but also enables the possibility for me to test other versions of the contract to see if, if we are changing to a different version in production of this kitchen service, I can run all my tests against that version of the contract to validate that the store service is still doing what it is supposed to be doing. Something that Lauren didn't mention here is also like the Sync API side of things. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so typically, Microcks is able to simulate HTTP endpoint, but also to simulate message producers and message consumers. So imagine, like in the case of the source service, you are developing in an application that is waiting for some messages to trigger some business functions. Microcks then simulates the original producers of messages, and then you are able, in isolation, to act and to receive those messages like if you were connected to the outer world. But these are just simulations provided by Microcks.
Exactly. And if we have 2 more minutes, the thing that I want to show is pretty much kind of like the source code of the configuration for these tests. As Laurent already mentioned, we have like a Microcks ensemble that basically picks up, the async API and the open API specs from the services, right? Like this is what we were seeing before in the slides. We also provide a Kafka connection in this case, so it can produce and simulate these messages coming back to the store from other services. And something that we find really interesting is that, again, from the Dapr point of view, this is just our normal container. But if you want to use these contracts and make them also Dapr enabled, we need to create, for example, another sidecar for the contract. And something that we actually found by doing these demos is that Microcks gives you these discoverable endpoints for the simulations. So you can actually say, okay, I want to get the endpoint for the Pizza Kitchen API with this version. And what I'm getting here is like a new endpoint that I will need to call when I'm doing the service-to-service invocation. So without changing the application code, without changing the configurations, and just by using a middleware router alias here, we can basically say, instead of going to the prepare endpoint on the kitchen service, go to the contract endpoint /prepare, which is the same functionality, but in the simulation, to get the reply from the simulated service in this case. So this configuration, when we run the application and when we run the tests, is basically simulating, this other service without starting a full instance that might have database requirements or, message broker requirements or any other infrastructure that it needs to run. So we kind of like try to enable the store service team to move faster with their applications.
Yeah, exactly. And the nice thing, as you mentioned, is that it plugs nicely with the service discovery approach of the Dapr container. You just ask Microcks, give me your endpoint for this service and this version. You can have multiple versions if you also want to test that you did not introduce breaking changes or this kind of stuff. And you just feed this into the Dapr container. So from the application point of view, it's totally transparent that you are actually using simulation instead of real dependencies.
Exactly. And just to finish, because we're running out of time, this is kind of like my learnings from the Dapr project and by working with Laurent on this. We actually realized this is like setting up all these, setting out all of like this wiring between containers and these other simulations in this case. It's very complex and it will take a user a lot to get this done. By creating this integration and these examples that we are building with Laurent, we will publish a blog post in the CNCF, but also we will start having some examples inside the Java SDK to show how this can be done. And again, this is not only a Java thing, so this will apply to other languages. But we wanted to make sure that people understand that there are tools that will help them to do all this wiring and then create libraries that they can share with other teams. It was interesting also to find and use the app HTTP middleware option to change the route of the service invocation to go to the contract, because it requires like a versioning and the name of the contract that we want to use. And that's all working without any modifications in Dapr. And I think that it will be really interesting to see if we can create some sort of integration, deeper integration with Microcks, where when we start the simulation, we can tell them, like, this is a Dapr-enabled simulation, so it will actually create and connect to a sidecar automatically without the need of the user to wire all these things together for their applications. So that's what we had to present today. I hope that it was clear in the short time that we had.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Thank you both so much. Dana, any questions did you wanted to bring up or ask before we let them go?
No, yeah, thank you for the presentation. And yeah, it was very nice to see yeah, how you guys were able to integrate these two projects together.
One more thing that I wanted to mention is next week we're going to be presenting with Laurent in Spring I/O in Barcelona to the Spring community. The presentation will be completely Java focused for that specific community, where we try to explain why Dapr makes Spring better, but also showing that it integrates with other tools that they are already using. Like Microcks is okay in that community. So we wanted to make sure that we have like a larger reach into that space.
Gotcha. Awesome. So for folks that are watching, and let's say they wanted to get the source code for the sample you just showed, is that available somewhere for them to?
It's not available. Let me share the link here in the chat. Can you share it later? Like, can you share
Yeah,
it
if you
later?
put it in the private chat, I can go ahead and put it in the public one.
Excellent.
For folks to try out as well. So
Perfect.
when you give it to me, I'll put it in there. And then Laurent, for folks that are wanting to start with Microcks, like they can just go to microcks.io, I'm guessing.
Yes,
and
exactly. Microcks.io. We also have a Discord server with different channels, and we have full demonstration applications on different languages. So if you want to experiment, not with Java, but with Go, we have the same kind of applications demonstrating how to use it. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
All right, great.
Nice.
Great. Thank you two so much. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to take the two of you off. And next up, we're going to have Mark and Yaron, and they're going to be talking to us about the Workflow Composer. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
You're doing great. Thank you. Mark, you're muted.
Mark, you're muted. Got to unmute you real quick.
All right, yeah.
And now you're frozen.
Mark's living on an island. Sometimes he's doing
Brilliant. I shouldn't be. I'm here. Can you see me?
Yeah.
We can see you now.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, we got some exciting things to talk about today.
For sure. So we are not going to go into any slides. We are simply going to talk and demo, which is what I like. Also, it's very interesting to see that the Dapr project officially now has an opinion on pizza in the chat. Apparently, the Dapr project does not favor Hawaiian pizza. I don't either. That's not me who wrote that. I actually have no idea who's speaking on behalf of the project. So, yeah, this is great. Let's start talking about Dapr workflows and some of the challenges that developers have with it. You know, it's an amazing tool. We know it allows developers to write durable, long-running applications that are resilient to failure. Your cluster can go down, your pods can auto-scale, they can crash. You can have a bug by, dividing something by 0, right when you're in the middle of the most crucial aspect of your code, and then the workflow will essentially come up. It'll rehydrate the state, and you can continue off, and all of that can work with thousands of instances, which is great. But when it comes to actually developing, there are a lot of moving pieces to it. You need to know, first of all, how do you write those workflows? How do you register activities? How do you register the workflow inside of your main code, whether it's ASP.NET or Python or any HTTP server that you're using? How do you hook it up? What is the right or best practices that you need to have when writing these workflows in terms of like data modeling and just best practices for transitioning into inputs and outputs from activities? There's a lot of questions. And then writing these activities often take a long time because you introduce new ones and then you need to go back to the code. And what we've been seeing is that, Dapr is a code-first workflow engine, which is great. But then you have something that has been used in the industry for a long time, which are just, BPMN diagrams, which are used by legacy workflow engines. And these do not lend themselves well to workflow code-first workflow engines because they essentially have no way to integrate into runtime code. But what we've just launched today from Diagrid, and I want to make sure that everyone knows this is a Diagrid tool, is something called Workflow Composer. And I'm going to be sharing my screen and talk about that in a sec. And this basically allows you to upload any diagram. It can be BPMN. It can be a diagram that you even write yourself on a piece of paper, like we're going to see in a second. It can be anything that you drop inside of Draw.io or Google Sheets, and that can turn into code. Mark, before I go into that, it looks like you have something to say.
I've got to say, it's exciting. Let's get to the demo. But I mean, the whole goal here is to get you going started on workflow, yes? Because, you know, there are, I mean, it's not just BPN diagrams we're about to show. You know, it can be literally any sort of crafted workflow, some existing workflows you might have. You might even be doing like a POC and you're trying to kind of draw out what your workflows look like. But let's get into the demo, you're right. Yeah, let's
Yep. And we're going to start the demo with something fairly difficult. We could literally take any workflow diagram, you know, like one that's being actually written with a tool. But what I have here is actually a paper diagram. Like I've drawn this by hand, and I was never a hand model, but I guess there's a first time for everything in this life. And we have the start point here, and then we have, what is this thing? It's just
Inventory.
This is supposed to be inventory, but as you can see, it's inventory because my handwriting has really degraded since I started using computers. So probably this is going to be a typo in the generation aspect of things. And then we have payment, if I can read upside down.
Payment process.
Yeah, payment process, and then shipping. So it's a fairly straightforward, it's sequential, and we want to be able to generate this and turn this into code that not only gives you the actual code, but allows you to run it. It's compilable, it's deterministic, and you can deploy this thing to Kubernetes in less than a minute from when it is generated, and it'll only take 30 seconds. So let us see this in action. I'm sharing my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
All right, bringing up your screen right now. There you go.
Yep. Okay. So first of all, I want to say everyone can use this, and this is a free-to-use tool. It's AI-enabled, but you can use it for free. You can go to workflows.dapr.io, try it out. You essentially can turn any workflow diagram into a durable execution application that is fully resistant to failures and get this up and running locally in less than 20 seconds. We're going to see that, and deploy to Kubernetes. And if you want some examples and you don't know where to begin, we have these examples here, but we're going to go into that in just a second. So the first step is to upload the actual diagram. So I'm just going to browse, and this is what we saw earlier. This is the diagram I just showed, and I couldn't have made this into code necessarily because I don't even understand what I've written here. So this is going to be a pretty difficult example. Let's see if it works. And now we need to choose an output language, right? So we support C#, Java, Python, JavaScript, and Go. We are going to be selecting Python for now. And last step is just to click it. So we can see that we have this status here on the right, and this is going to be giving you information here. You have the latest message. So it's doing a whole bunch of stuff. There is much more to just figuring out what's happening inside of the workflow. And look, it finished so fast that I didn't have enough time to explain what's going on. So just to give you a small recap, and I'll just download this for a second. This actually understands all of the visual elements that are inside of the diagram. And then we have a very, very complex internal workflow that is turning these into code that is deterministic, is compilable, and that can be used in any sort of IDE immediately, whether it's VS Code, Cursor, JetBrains, whatever it is you're using for each one of those languages. And so this is essentially giving you a full ready-made solution. So I just downloaded this code. And if I go into my downloads folder here, it is called Drawn. So I think so. I'm just going to go into unzip and Drawn because that was the name of the file, I think. So we have that file, and you can see that I'm playing metal because it's giving me these suggestions. And I'm just going to save it into Drawn Workflows. Yeah, cool. So we've just opened that, and we're going to go into Drawn Workflows. This is the unzipped folder that contains the code we've just generated. I'm going to open up VS Code, and lo and behold, we have an existing real-time generated code for Dapr Workflows that contain everything we need to essentially fire up the workflow and use it, and also deploy to Kubernetes. So you have a Docker file here. It doesn't just have to be Kubernetes. You can just build it, deploy it to any container-based system that supports it, and it'll just run. But what you also have here is a full-fledged README that'll give you step-by-step instructions for how to actually get this up and running. And this is Python. So as you can see, it generated Python commands, and this is all fairly quick to run. So before we actually run this thing, let's take a look at the code. So we're going into workflow here, and this is the crux of things. So this is the main workflow.py. This is the structure that should have what we saw in the diagram, those 3 activities that are sequential. And we can see that we have those 3 activities right here. And I'm just going to zoom in a little. And also look at that. I've even understood my handwriting and figured out that it's supposed to be inventory, not inventory, which is what I thought was written there. So we have these 3 activities here. And if we go and look at those activities, before we actually go into the code, you can see that you have a customization guide. So you have step-by-step instructions that are walking you through what was created, where you want to insert your business logic, implementation steps, and just give you good general purpose tips. And if we look at those activities, we can see that, and I'm just going to zoom out a little. These are all of the generated activities that we have here. This is where we put our own business logic. Now, the question is asked, hey, I might have business logic that's encapsulated inside of the diagram. Can we generate code for that? And well, we're going to take a look at that in a second and answer that question. But for now, let's just go over these 3 activities. We have payment process, we've got ship order, everything looks to be in place. It's all generated here. And of course, now this is all wired up into an example HTTP server that we have that is going to run this using Fast API. This is all just boilerplate code running the HTTP server, getting some environment variables. This is all not important. You can use it in production, or you can bring your own and just take the workflow pieces here and just wire it up into your own code base. You can do whatever you want. We also get the image that was uploaded with it, which is what we have here. And now we're actually going to go and see if that code actually runs. So we know it's compilable. We know that it's downloadable. It can be opened in any IDE. But can we actually run it? So we basically have instructions here. I'm not going to be using UV. And for pip, I'm just not going to be using a virtual environment. So the only thing I think I really need is pip installing our requirements file to install dependencies. So let me just do this. And this should go in just a second. And I'm just installing it here with the dependencies locally. And we have that running. And then according to the tutorial, the only thing that's left to do is to run Dapr run. So Dapr is a local CLI that I have that runs this application and the Dapr sidecar together. So I'm just going to do Dapr run -f dot. And so this is going to start it. And looks like the code is running. It's all connected. We can see the log messages. And now I should be able to start sending commands. So we also generated these 2 HTTP files here, which will essentially allow you to just start sending commands to the workflow to start it, so we can see the execution history and see what's up. So we have the start workflow here, and this is going to be talking to the Dapr sidecar, telling it to start the order processing workflow. And here I just want to mention, based on the contextual understanding that we had while generating the code, you're going to see this naming convention and terminology throughout the code. So we understood that this is we saw check inventory, shipping, order processing. So we named this order processing workflow. Of course, you can change it, but this AI-enabled platform does a pretty good job at understanding this, and this is going to be the name of the workflow. So I'm going to
your own. I think you can even kind of put fun hints inside the rest of the diagram to say, name my workflow, things like this, and try those.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, there's some fun things that you can actually do to even write your own text as a sort of a pseudo prompt that it can interpret, kind of give you those names for you. Yes.
Very much so. And we're going to see other examples for how you can actually enrich even business logic with the diagram. So here I just sent a response. We got back an instance ID. And if we go back to the code, we can see the workflow executed to completion perfectly. We have this executing inventory activity, and we have executing payment process activity, and we have executing ship order activity. So this essentially reached the workflow end. And this probably saved a regular developer, somebody who's new, coming into Dapr, even, people who are already experienced with Dapr and just want to get up and running or insert new activities into their already existing workflows, many hours of just fiddling around with it and leaving out the entire guesswork for how to wire up workflows with different HTTP servers for different types of languages and have all of the best practices following through. So, you might be asking yourself, hey, this is great, but can I capture, some real business logic? So now I'm going to go back into the browser and I'm going to scroll down here, and we have a lot of these different types of activities. We have BPMNs, we have conditional, exclusive. These are all BPMN types of terminology, but not just for BPMN. We have parallel activities and sequential ones. Right now, we're going to show all examples. And if we scroll here to all the way to the right, and by the way, you can see we have some pretty complex ones here. I'm going to be taking this one, which is a Dapr Quick Start example. And this is, I think, what we have in our docs. So this is something that you can draw yourself, and we can see that we actually have conditionals here, right? Is inventory sufficient? Yes or no. Is cost larger than 5,000? Yes or no. And this is really encapsulating business logic within the diagram. Can we actually capture that and put that inside of the main workflow code to be able to also execute on this? Let's see. So now I'm going to choose C#, just going to be choosing a different language and generate the code. And we can see that this is processing. So this will take 30-second stops. Now, talking about these messages here, it's starting out by extracting those activities. Sometimes it'll throw in these JSON. These messages here, now it's doing the branching and decision points. When we actually build the code-based decisions, it's trying to see if you have any data classes on there, and it's identifying your start and end nodes to know when to start and when to end. And then it's essentially building the entire code base. Now we're validating it. This validating structure message you saw is just making sure that it's actually compilable. And now this is completed. We can download the code. It's called Dapr Quick Start Original. So we're going to go back into VS Code here. And we will just unzip Dapr Quick Start Original into, let's call it Dapr Quick Start 2. And we're going to that real quick and open that in VS Code. And we're almost out of time. So I'm not going to be running this one, but it will run. And what we can see here, that if we go into workflows and we go into the, let me just kill those pop-ups here, and we have this order processing workflow, which is where we essentially schedule those activities. We actually see that it understood the business logic, and we have these evaluating conditions inside of the code, right? So is the inventory sufficient? Yes or no. Does it exceed the threshold? Yes or no. And then it basically continues on with the workflow execution. And this is how we can actually incorporate business logic within those activities. Now, if you're asking, hey, I have even more complex business logic, like how complex can this get? Can I actually, capture calls to different services? Can I capture database calls? And the answer is not yet, but I'll let you leave this call with a guess to where we're really going with this. And this is going to be expanding in scope. This is extremely useful for developers who already know Dapr workflows, developers who are new to Dapr workflows. And you can just start bringing out your own diagrams right now if you go to workflows.diagrid.io. And I'm going to stop sharing and give it back to you.
Well, before you disappear from here, Yaron, at this point, I mean, it's just fun to look inside there that, you generated a fully named workflow and all the activities in this case. It was a pretty complex workflow in this case. So if you look at all those activities inside there, there was, a good 10 activities inside that, or 5 activities. And the point with all of this is, like, it's an amazing way to get started. Yes, if you don't know and understand, writing Dapr workflow, you can get started with this. And what we really want is tons and tons of feedback on this. We recognize that there's total improvements inside here. Try it out. The languages are very specific in terms of the code that they generate. It's very code specific. Gets generated around those. We want to make it sure that you've got, as Yaron pointed out, Docker files to run on Kubernetes, test files inside all of this. The code that gets generated, would love to get your feedback on it in terms of how you'd actually like to think some of that gets modified, how accurate it is. All of these things we're learning. So, come back, get onto the Discord channel. and start kind of giving us feedback around why you think this is, an amazing tool to get started on and where you'd like to see it go.
Thank you. All right, back to you.
Well,
Wow. Wow.
I mean, there's some amazing things you can do with this. I mean, you can draw. I mean, what are some of the things we can do? If you get an existing BPM diagram you have, try it out. If you want to have even any workflow diagram for that matter that you can sketch. Now I can imagine that you could even roll a whiteboard into your development team room. You're sketching with your business person. Let's kind of figure out your workflow. You're erasing it all. You finish it up, take a photo of just your whiteboard, turn around, boom, you have working code running there and then, and you can test it out and start building those things.
And I also see in the chat questions, and
yeah, we do have some questions in here.
Yeah, great to take some questions on.
Yeah, let's pull up a couple of these real quick. I'll start with Mohammed because he seems very excited about this as well. Can an agent create their own workflow? So from my understanding, this looks like you have to upload something into a website. Like there's no API per se available for this, right?
So that's a good call out. We can expose an API that lets you do this, right? And if you think about it, if you have a way to essentially create your own textual representation from the diagram, we'll be able to take that in as well, right? So like a prompt. And there's other news. I don't want to talk about this too much, but I saw MCP mentioned here. And we are looking into making Dapr into an MCP server, which will essentially allow you to just start workflows using natural language, which I have running on my machine. Not yet ready to show that, but it's pretty freaking awesome. And Mohammed is asking, can agent create their own workflow now? The answer is yes. So for example, we have Dapr Agents. Dapr Agents is a framework built on Dapr Workflows. And if you have a diagram that encapsulates an agentic workflow, then this can create all of the building blocks you need to translate that into a Dapr agents. Or we can actually look into just making this a first-class citizen and be able to, go even higher in terms of how you model things and turn this into Dapr agents code instead of Dapr workflows code. So you'll actually be able to choose how deep or up or how high you want to go up the stack. If you really want to go towards workflows that are general purpose, you could generate what I've shown here, which is just Dapr workflows code. Or if you want to be able to generate agents, we will be able to contextually understand that it's agentic workflows and then be able to generate Dapr agents code.
But I don't think anyone else has built a tool like this that is pretty amazing, that you can take those diagrams, it interprets them, it thinks about them all, and it gives you compilable code across this. And just think about the acceleration that you can do with this now. There you are, you come along, you've got some code that you want to write, you just want to even just learn about Dapr workflows. Think of the acceleration that you can do in POCs, the fast turnaround time. You can build these projects. You can even take, start to augment your diagram a lot more about and test out those things and build those scenarios around it all. So I don't think any other tool like this exists. I think this is kind of a first by far. If there is, kind of pointed out to us, but certainly I don't think anyone else has built something quite as comprehensive as this across all those languages, and it takes all the full power of Dapr workflows. And that's the incredible thing about this all. And as you said, we can expand it beyond there because, now inside those business logic, you can drop in other Dapr API calls as well. And of course, if you want to go and learn about Dapr, go off to Dapr University. We've got a great course there on workflow, combined there inside of Dapr University about how to learn Dapr workflows, and then sort of come back here and try it out. And so we want to bring those two together as well, so that at the Dapr University you can use this as a tool. It's a great learning tool, as well as get yourself started on your business logic. I mean, take days off writing that boilerplate code that you could just draw as a diagram.
Nice. And then one question I had, and it looks like Mike also had a similar question.
Yeah, I will answer that question if I may.
Okay.
So Mike, yes, we do actually generate component specs. So right now, when you're running locally, we generate the Redis component spec, I believe. And you can, of course, go on docs.dapr.io, switch it out to any YAML that Dapr supports. But as we mentioned before, we are going to be taking in more metadata that you can give us also through prompts. And if you go like, oh, I want to create a workflow that talks to a PostgreSQL database, well, then we will generate the Postgres YAML for you, where you just have to bring in your connection string or your token, and that'll happen. And for Tom, yes, Tom, this is, I don't know if it's in beta or not, seriously. It's a tool that you can use, it doesn't actually deploy to production, so you can run it locally and see if if it does what it needs to. So I'm guessing it's stable, and yes, it can generate in C# code. We'll be improving it. And before I just give you the question back, Cecil, for Mohammed, you're saying it can unlock remote agents in MCP. For sure, we are able to understand code that goes talk to this MCP server and get the clients, and then bring that back into the workflows. Something we will definitely be adding.
Yeah, I mean, feedback. Try it out. This is our first release. We'd like to jump on the Discord channel. That's what we want.
Yep.
And so when folks go to the Discord channel, because I know we've mentioned this a few times, is there a specific channel or category in Discord that you want them to reach you out to, or should they go in the workflows channel? Should they go into the frameworks channel?
Yeah, if you're on the bottom of the page, it actually kind of goes off. At the moment, it goes into there's a Discord channel we have for Dapr set up inside there. So it goes into it's a Dapr thing that was built, and it goes into a Dapr Discord channel. Just to make
But we also have a sub channel under providers, I think, under Dapr Discord, so you can engage with us there as well. There's also a contact us page. So if you need higher limits, because this is a completely free tool, but it does have limits, so if you need higher limits, or if you want to give us feedback, or if anything goes wrong, you can certainly contact us. Cecil, you had a question before yourself. Can we answer that?
Yeah, I did have a question, and more so like a comment. One of the things this makes me think about is like how we generate code because this is a code generator for me, right? Mm-hmm. How we generate code for like folks just getting started, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think it'd be interesting if that experience was like in my IDE or in my editor. So like if I can have that experience and like, drag and drop something in a VS Code extension or something of that sort, and now it scaffolds out my project for me. And I could see that happening across all Dapr building blocks, right? Like, hey, this is what let me write the description of what Dapr looks like for me. And I upload it in the thing. And then now y'all have just provided me with like, let's say 60% of the code that I was going to write anyway. Like, that increases my time to productivity tremendously.
Yeah, it's actually a great call out. Yes.
Yeah. A VS Code extension where you
something we'll get into. Yeah, bringing this closer to the developer in their inner dev loop. And by the way, this can also really tie in together non-technical people and developers, because if you think about, PMs and people who just want to be able to explain a workflow to a developer, and then the developer needs to understand what that actually looks like in code, then now it can be done extremely easily. Or even if you have a bunch of devs in a dev team sitting in a conference room, whiteboarding their workflow on a whiteboard, and then just taking a picture of it and generating fully working code, that's available as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or migrating existing ones as well. You might have existing workflows that you have that you've drawn out already. You just take the existing drawn workflow, try it out literally in any drawing tool, as your own show, even his writing, it gets generated. But you can use any of the drawing tools, existing things. BPM works, but it isn't just BPM. Try out all sorts of different types of workflow diagrams.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for showing us that. Again, for folks that are watching, and I know some of you all popped in late. So if you head over to workflows.dagr.io, you can go ahead and upload your drawings and, have the tool generate some workflows for you. And so if you want to share some feedback, definitely go ahead and check out the Discord channel, and I'm sure, Yaron and Mark are available on the social medias, on LinkedIn and, X and all these different places as well. You could also find them there too.
We're everywhere. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you all so much. I'm going to take you all off the screen now, and then Dana and I are going to go through the community show and tell really quick.
Yes.
So Dana, you want me to share? I can share my screen again real quick.
Yes, please.
All right, cool. All right, so let's go through this really quick. We got a few minutes left. So Mark and Yaron are from Diagrid. They're the founders of Diagrid, and it looks like Diagrid is also having a Dapr AI hackathon happening May 6th through June 27th. So if folks are interested in joining that or learning about it, signing up, creating a team, definitely go ahead and do that. Looks like there's a chance for cash prizes too. So Dana, maybe you and I should join this and
yes,
see if we can win. I don't work for Diagrid, so maybe I could sign up and see if I can win some of those cash prizes for that hackathon. Microsoft Build, this is coming up pretty soon. I believe this is next week. Yeah, I believe this is next week. Also, I believe there's going to be a lot of Dapr conversations there happening next week as well. I believe the Diagrid folks have a booth there also. But if any of you are heading over there, definitely worth checking out. Great conference in Seattle. Tons of other events that are coming up. So NDC Oslo, looks like there's a talk on Tales from the Trenches, building a distributed system with Aspire and Dapr. Looks like that's going to be presented by Nico. Walter, we just had Walter on, or Walter is still, in the background hanging out with us a little bit. One of our new Dapr meteors. Walter's also giving a talk at DevTech in Brazil. If folks are in Brazil, want to check that out. Dev Talks, which is another conference in Romania. And what else we got going on? And then, yeah, again, tons of events and talks and things of that nature about Dapr. Looks like Alice and Bilgen are doing a session in May 15th on improving Dapr operations with Diagrid Conductor. And then in Amsterdam, Dana and Mark. Looks like on May 27th. You want to talk about this a little bit, Dana?
Yeah, so this is a hands-on workshop that Mark and I will do in 2 weeks together with PyLadies Amsterdam. So it's going to be hybrid. You can join us online or in person if you're based in Amsterdam. And we will introduce the Dapr agents to both folks that are just getting started, but also for a bit more intermediate users. So yeah, if you're around, if you're based in Amsterdam or you want to join us online, please do.
Okay, so is this hybrid? Is it online and in person as well?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and also we have a collection of blog posts that are available. So, Dapr in Azure Container Apps, how to run Dapr on the edge without the internet. Ooh, that sounds interesting. And some other ones about what is Dapr and using Dapr with our pub sub building blocks. Now, for all of these links that we're talking about and sharing, they will be available. We'll add them to the descriptions of the videos, as well as, we'll post them in our Discord channel, and we also post them on social media as well. So you'll have the ability to take a look at these later on if you need to. So no need to having to screenshot the picture or anything like that. And then also on social media, again, tons of stuff that folks are talking about with Dapr. Here, looking at Dan has a post on making Dapr play nicely with his infrastructure stuff. Some posts here from Diagrid and GitHub trending. So dive into the world of agentic AI with our Dapr Agentic Cloud Ascent design pattern. Have no way, if you're interested in learning about what that is, definitely go ahead and check out the link there on, GitHub trendings. And over in our Discord channel, it looks like we have some shout outs for Waldo and Joe Boubert. Hanging out inside of the Pound's Java SDK and JavaScript SDK channels inside of our Discord channel. I know we've mentioned the Discord channel a few times in this session, but if you're interested in finding links for those, just connected with the Dapr community in general, head over to dapr.io/community, and you'll see links to the Discord channel and the schedule for these community calls. Our Meteor program, if you're interested in being a Meteor, just like Walter is, and Walter introduced himself earlier in the beginning of this community call today. If you want to know what does it take to become a Dapr Meteor and apply to be a part of the program, definitely feel free to head over there and check that out. And then you also have the ability to find other ways that you yourself can contribute to the Dapr project, whether it be contributions to docs or GitHub issues or committing code or anything of the sort. Definitely would appreciate that very much. And just as in a show of support, we love to give out badges here on the Dapr community call. So what you can do today, go ahead and use your phone or your smart devices and go ahead and scan this QR code, and you'll get a free badge for just helping support the Dapr community. And we have tons of other badges that we support as well. Again, there's a presenter badge, there's a presenter badge, there's a docs writer badge, there's a contribution badge. So tons of opportunities for you to go ahead and support the Dapr community. But with that being said, folks, thank you so much. That is it for this month's Dapr community call. We'll be back with you next month. We'll be having more presentations and demos and conversations about all things related to Dapr. So thank you, everyone. And we will see you all next time.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone.